Chapter 1: The Corrosive Power of Corruption. Have you ever pondered about the insidious impact of corruption on society? It's a question that might seem simple on the surface, but the answer is far from straightforward. Corruption, in its many forms, is like a slow-acting poison, seeping into the veins of our society and gradually corroding the foundations we hold dear. Consider this. Corruption isn't just about the high-profile scandals we see in the news. It's the subtle, everyday violations that often go unnoticed. It's the under-the-table bribes that keep the inefficient in power. It's the nepotism that stifles merit and innovation. It's the embezzlement that robs public funds meant for schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. And the effects? They're far-reaching and deeply damaging. Economically, corruption is a drain on our resources. It siphons off wealth, creating a widening chasm between the haves and the have-nots. It stifles growth, discourages investment, and perpetuates poverty. But the impact of corruption goes beyond economics. It undermines trust in our institutions, fostering a culture of cynicism and apathy. It erodes social cohesion, fueling resentment and conflict. It stifles the voice of the people, creating a political landscape where power is concentrated in the hands of the few. The reality is stark. Corruption is a threat to our society's development and progress. It's a roadblock that hinders us from achieving the kind of society we aspire to be one that is fair, equitable, and prosperous. But here's the thing. Corruption isn't an insurmountable problem. It's a human-made issue, and it can be addressed by human-made solutions. It's a battle that can be won, but it requires our collective effort. It demands our vigilance, our courage, and yes, our dark motivation. Corruption affects us all, but what if the key to combating it lies in a place you'd least expect? Let's delve into that thought as we unmask dark motivation and its role in the fight against corruption. Chapter 2: Unmasking Dark Motivation. What if we told you that the fight against corruption often begins in the shadows? This might sound like the start of a suspense thriller, but it's a reality that's far more riveting. This is where we introduce the concept of dark motivation. Dark motivation is not about giving in to our baser instincts or surrendering to negativity. Instead, it's about channeling those emotions that society often deems unacceptable, like anger, resentment, or a thirst for revenge into a force for good. It's about taking those feelings that bubble up when we witness or experience corruption firsthand and using them as fuel for change. Imagine a person who has been wronged, perhaps by a corrupt system or individual. Their anger, their sense of injustice, becomes a driving force. They desire to prevent others from experiencing the same injustice. This is a classic example of dark motivation in action. But what makes dark motivation so intriguing is its psychological basis. It's a testament to human resilience and adaptability. We as humans have a remarkable ability to harness even the most negative of emotions and turn them into catalysts for positive change. This is the power of dark motivation. And when it comes to fighting corruption, dark motivation can play a pivotal role. It can be the spark that ignites a movement, the fuel that sustains a campaign, the force that drives individuals to stand up and say, "Enough is enough." This is not to say that every anti-corruption effort is fueled by dark motivation, but it is to recognize that sometimes it is our darkest experiences that inspire the brightest change. In the face of corruption, individuals can harness their dark motivations to challenge the status quo, to expose wrongdoing, and to demand accountability. Dark motivations can inspire us to take action, to stand up, and to make a difference. In the fight against corruption, even the darkest motivations can illuminate the path to change. So, let's step out of the shadows and into the light, using our dark motivations as a beacon to guide us toward a future free of corruption. Before we continue, remember to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll join our community of like-minded individuals. Together, we can achieve success and wealth as we learn, grow, and support each other. Click subscribe now, and let's dive back into today's topic. Chapter 3: Real-Life Heroes Against Corruption. Now, let us delve into the world of those who have used their dark motivations to wage war against corruption. Our first figure is a woman from a small town whose life was turned upside down by corrupt practices. Her family was evicted from their home due to a fraudulent land deal. Angered and emboldened by this injustice, she transformed her resentment into a powerful force for change. She exposed the land scam, leading to the perpetrator's prosecution. Her dark motivation? Revenge. But she channeled this revenge constructively, restoring justice to her community. Next, let's turn our gaze to a doctor who witnessed the devastating effects of corruption on healthcare. He saw patients denied treatment due to bribes and kickbacks. Deeply disturbed by these experiences, he was driven by an intense guilt. This guilt, a form of dark motivation, propelled him to launch a campaign against corruption in health services. His efforts led to an overhaul of the system, ensuring fair access to healthcare for all. We also have the story of a former corporate executive. He found himself entangled in a web of corporate corruption, forced to partake in unethical practices. Eventually, his shame and regret transformed into a dark motivation. He blew the whistle on his company's illicit activities, leading to significant reforms in the industry. There's also a tale of a teacher who watched as corruption seeped into the educational system, affecting the future of countless students. Frustrated and disheartened, she found her dark motivation in her despair. She rallied her community, leading a movement that resulted in policy changes and a transparent, corruption-free education system. Lastly, we recount the journey of an environmental activist. He observed how corruption led to environmental degradation and the destruction of his beloved natural landscapes. His dark motivation was a deep-seated fear of a dystopian future. This fear pushed him to expose corrupt practices in environmental regulation, leading to stricter enforcement and protection of natural resources. Each one of these real-life heroes faced corruption head-on. They were driven by dark motivations: revenge, guilt, shame, despair, and fear. Yet, they harnessed these negative emotions, turning them into a powerful force against corruption. They stood up for what was right, sparking change and making a difference in their respective fields. They showed us that dark motivations, when channeled correctly, can become powerful catalysts for change. They demonstrated that with courage, determination, and the right motivation, anyone can stand against corruption. They proved that individuals can indeed make a significant impact. These stories are a testament to the power of the human spirit. They show us that even in the face of corruption, we can rise, resist, and enact meaningful change. They remind us that we too can be agents of change, that we too can harness our dark motivations to fight against corruption. These individuals, driven by their dark motivations, have made a significant difference in the fight against corruption. Chapter 4: Harnessing Dark Motivation for Change. So, how can we channel our dark motivations into constructive action against corruption? The key lies in transforming these dark motivations into a force of positivity and change. And this isn't as daunting as it might seem. Let's consider a few strategies. Firstly, we need to embrace transparency. By promoting openness and honesty, we can shed light on shady dealings and illicit activities that thrive in the shadows of corruption. Transparency acts as the flashlight in the dark, revealing the truth and empowering us to take informed actions. Secondly, accountability is crucial. Holding those involved in corrupt practices accountable can discourage these activities and promote fairness. It's like a mirror, reflecting the actions of individuals and organizations, and ensuring they face the consequences of their deeds. But transparency and accountability alone aren't enough. We need active public participation. From ordinary citizens to influential figures, everyone has a role to play in combating corruption. By using our voices, our votes, or our influence, we can all contribute to this fight. Now, you may be wondering, how can we use our dark motivations in this context? Well, dark motivations aren't inherently negative. They can be harnessed to fuel our determination to combat corruption. Feelings of anger or frustration at the injustice of corruption can be channeled into the drive to push for change. That burning desire for justice, that thirst for equity, can be the catalyst that propels us to take action. And taking action doesn't always mean grand gestures or sweeping reforms. It could be as simple as educating others about corruption, supporting anti-corruption organizations, or advocating for policy changes. Small steps can lead to big changes. So, don't be afraid of your dark motivations. Instead, harness them. Transform them into a powerful force that fights against corruption and for a better, fairer society. Use them as a source of energy to drive your actions, to fuel your passion, to ignite your resolve. Remember, even the darkest motivations can be a powerful force for change. Chapter 5. A summary. Let's recap what we've learned about the power of dark motivation in combating corruption. Corruption, as we've seen, is a societal plague. It eats away at the foundations of our communities, impacting the most vulnerable among us. But there's a silver lining, the concept of dark motivation. This intriguing psychological phenomenon can push individuals to stand up against corruption. Driven by a mix of anger, frustration, and a deep-seated desire for justice. We've heard inspiring stories of real-life heroes who've harnessed their dark motivations to create monumental change, proving that every one of us has the potential to be a catalyst for reform. But how do we harness this dark motivation? It's about channeling these raw emotions into tangible actions, supporting anti-corruption organizations, advocating for policy changes, and becoming agents of change in our communities. In the fight against corruption, your motivations, even the darkest ones, can make a world of difference. The question is, are you ready to make that difference? Thanks for watching. Embrace the shadows, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for our next video. Until then, harness the darkness and forge your path to greatness.